Hi guys, I'm Rose Shards, but feel free to call me Rose or Chloe, and today I'm sharing a video that's a little overdue. If you guys missed it, in March I released an animated short called Rainbow Willows, focusing on my animated series concept about two ghost cats named Cream and Spooky. It's over 2 minutes long, and I actually did the vast majority of it myself. I'm proud of what I was able to achieve, but honestly, I sort of needed a break after doing all of that work. So while I wanted to make a custom drawing for the thumbnail and the speed paint a while ago, especially because I want to spend a lot more time focusing on my channel this year, I didn't want to drive myself completely crazy either. So here it is now, and over the next few months I should have a lot more original content to share with you guys, so yay! Alright, so on to the process for my animated short. If you didn't know, I actually came up with these characters several years ago. In fact, I tried making my first official animated clip with them way back when I was 13, which I never actually ended up sharing. I might post it though if you guys want to take a look at it. I also posted some other animations with them that I look back at and kind of cringe at now, but that's okay because it just means I've come a long way since. I've been working hard to develop my project over the years. A lot of stuff is still in development and far from being finalized, so much so that I actually wasn't planning on focusing on Cream and Spooky again for a little bit, but I gave it some thought, and now that I'm an adult with industry experience, I really wanted to see how much I'd improved and how much I could push myself now. So last March, I started brainstorming some ideas for a short that I could work on that would highlight some of the main themes of my series concept. I wanted to keep it short enough that I could do all or most of it myself, while showcasing the characters and the world as much as I realistically could given my limitations. The main story and setting for the short actually popped into my head pretty much instantly, but I actually did struggle a lot with finalizing the intro because a lot of my initial ideas were a little too ambitious in terms of action, camera rotations, effects, etc. And considering it's mostly just me working on my projects at the moment, I really had to tone it down. I do think I was still able to come up with a compromise that was effective though. Despite all I did to simplify and condense my short as much as possible, I was still feeling pretty anxious about being able to get it all done. Because of this, I actually put Rainbow Willows on the back burner for a little while to focus on my other short, Spooky's Escape, for a little while. So development was a little slow and sometimes disorganized for a few months. Despite the boards being relatively simple, I did them slowly over 2 or 3 months. During this time, I also started drawing some updated character concepts for Cream and Spooky. I tried experimenting a lot with the shapes while still trying to incorporate elements from earlier versions of their designs. The Haunted Mansion poster I did several years ago actually served as great reference for me surprisingly, though I've definitely improved since I've made it. I was especially happy with how Cream's updated design came out, mostly because I remember being so proud of the reference for her I made back in 2021. So I took that base from 2021 and kind of just cleaned it up while trying to incorporate some of the cuter, bubblier features from an older version of her design that I felt worked well and highlighted her personality. I put a lot more thought and intention into my shapes and such now, and I'm actually planning on making a video about how I approach character design at some point, so stay tuned for that. Due to the limitations that come with essentially being a one-person team, I actually didn't get to do an official turnaround for Cream and Spooky, which is admittedly a pretty major thing to skip, but I just tried to keep the characters in their quarter front views as much as possible to kind of avoid this being a big issue. I also went with my very first concepts for pretty much all of the creatures except for the Shadow Dude at the end, who got a whopping 2 concepts. Wow, I know. But because the Ghost World creatures were only in a handful of shots, it really just wasn't strategic for me to spend too much time worrying about them. As an indie creator, I have to be very careful when it comes to deciding what elements deserve more of my time and effort. Plus, I thought most of the creatures actually turned out pretty cute anyways, so. Now, you may notice that time is kind of a recurring theme here. Animation takes a very long time, especially when you're doing most of it on your own. On top of this, I was working full-time at a studio until September of last year. I was doing freelance work for some indie projects, and I was working on and prioritizing my other short, Spooky's Escape. Despite this, I really wanted to push myself to do as much as possible. So when I received my voice lines from my actors and ended up feeling the pacing was a little fast after I edited them into the boards, I made the decision to add a little more dialogue. Initially, Cream was just supposed to say "the little guys" before heading over to the waterfall, but I just felt that entire section was just too quick. So I had my voice actors do a little more, and so that shot definitely ended up being significantly longer than I planned, but I think it was worth it. But point is, things were really piling up for me at this point, so I decided to recruit 2 of my friends, Andy and Tony, to help me out. I had sketched out all of the backgrounds during the storyboard stage, and so I had Andy do the line art for 10 of them. Tony did the rigs for the mouse and the mushroom cat. They were a huge help, so make sure to show them some love. I will be crediting everyone who worked on my short in the description. So after wrapping up all the visuals for Spooky's Escape in September and getting let go from my studio job, I started working on Rainbow Willows full-time. I was still waiting on some revisions for my voice actors, and I wasn't finished with all of the backgrounds, but I definitely had enough to work with to start animating some shots. Thankfully, I had already completed and worked with Spooky's rig because of my other short, and I had managed to do Cream's rig in a few days over the summer. I didn't really get to test out her rig before moving on to animation, but again, if I wanted to even try and stay on schedule, I had to cut some corners. I just made notes and updated the rigs as necessary as I went along. If you're not sure what a rig is, it's basically when you draw parts of the character on separate layers and move these parts around rather than drawing everything frame by frame. It's a little difficult to explain, but that's the very basic idea of it. It's what most TV shows use these days because it tends to be faster. Something that I really love about rigged animation is the more that you use a rig, the faster the process can be. You can save and reuse a ton of poses within a rig. For example, if I work on a shot and have a character look up, I can copy and paste the head if I need it for another shot where the same character needs to look up. In Toon Boom, you can copy and reuse as much or as little of a pose as you like. You can even reuse bits of animation. For example, I did a spooky run cycle for this shot here, but I was able to reuse it a few shots later and just moved the arms and legs and stuff over to match it to the perspective of the new shot better. So as I went along, I was able to reuse more elements and make things just a little bit quicker. With Rainbow Willows being my main focus at this point, things were actually smooth sailing for a while. I'd animated about half of my short, 65-ish seconds, within 6 weeks. At this point, I was aiming for it to come out in January or February if possible. But unfortunately, this is where things got quite messy again. My 18-year-old cat's health took a sudden turn for the worse, and she ended up passing away at the end of November. I took it exceptionally hard because I had gotten her when I was 3. She had quite literally been in my life since I started kindergarten, and my earliest memory was probably seeing her in the pet store. I took time to grieve for obvious reasons. On top of this, I was running out of scenes I could work on. I was still waiting on some voice lines, and there were several shots I needed to finalize the backgrounds for before I could animate them. Progress was seriously halted for several weeks. I went around a month without working on Rainbow Willows at all. To sort of de-stress, I decided to work on Bloom, an animation meme I also released this year, my goal with that just being to have a fun and chill time drawing without focusing too much on perfecting anything. December was definitely really hectic for me. After spending those few weeks away from the project, I returned with the goal of finalizing the short for early March. With the Spooky Plush campaign initially running from February 9th to March 9th, I realized I absolutely had to get everything done within this time frame. All of the backgrounds were done, and there were just a few shots left that needed character animation. I was super pumped and ready to tackle everything that was left. I started effects animation, which was honestly a challenge because I think it's something I'm overall pretty weak at. I did a few simple sketch tests for the waterfall, used as many references as I could, and just hoped for the best when it came to cleanup. I was running out of time, and I definitely did not have time to do full tests beforehand. I kind of just had to take some risks and do the best that I could. Thankfully, I was able to reuse the waterfall effects several times and added filters and stuff to just try and make it look pretty. After I did all of my effects, I was still waiting on one final voice line, and because I'm crazy, while I was waiting, an idea popped into my head. What if I add in another shot? Originally, Rainbow Willows opened by going straight from the first shot to the shot with the mouse, but I felt that was just a little too quick. I wanted to try and showcase just a little more of the world if possible. So I decided to speedrun 2 character designs, rigs, a new background, and added a few extra seconds of animation to my short. While a few more seconds really doesn't seem like much, animation really is time consuming, and a lot of thought goes into even the smallest scenes. Like, I recorded some of the rigging process for the Numfluff creature, and what is even happening here? Oh my gosh. But anyways, adding this in during the last few weeks of production was kind of stressful and probably not something I'd recommend doing, but I think it was worth it. Anyways, as I was working on that, I received my last voice line and was able to finalize the audio. I had just one shot left to animate. After all these months, the end was finally in sight. The only problem was that at this point, there was only a week before the planned release date, so I definitely had to crunch. The last shot I had left to animate was the one where Cream mentioned spending most of her afterlife alone, which I felt was a pretty important point in the short, so I wanted to put as much time into it as I could. Thankfully, with most of the character acting being on the cellular side, it didn't take me too long, but as the longest shot in the entire short at 16 seconds long, it was still far from an easy task. I definitely did not get much sleep during the final week of production. I spent 2 or 3 days on this shot before moving on to the very final things I needed to do on the project. I moved on to compositing, which I did in both Toon Boom and After Effects. I had composited some scenes earlier during the animation stage, but for what I had left, I spent around a day on. For the most part, I just added rim lighting and some gradients to most shots, so nothing too complex, sort of just repetitive. I finished that around 5 AM the morning the animation went live, but my job wasn't quite done. I still had to find and add in literally all of the sound effects. I even made a few of my own sounds. I did voices for all of the creatures other than the mouse, which is kind of funny. For a few small things, I was able to just record some stuff in my room, added some filters if necessary, and just kind of hope for the best. I'm actually pretty happy with how the sound turned out, especially considering I did it all in a few hours and have literally no proper experience with audio. I've definitely improved a lot since my older Cream and Spooky animations. With literally all of this done now in the afternoon, just hours before Rainbow Willows release, there was only one final thing I needed to do: make a thumbnail. Looking back, this is something I deeply regret, but I hadn't really planned out anything for the thumbnail, and at this point, I had no time to really make a custom drawing. I mean, I probably could have made something quick, but it really just was risky, and after all that hard work, hours of lost sleep, plus an all-nighter, I was not willing to jeopardize the release of my animation, and I really did not want to add much more on my plate either. So I just edited together some screenshots and made some quick thumbnails, none of which I was really proud of, but it was all I could really do. But again, I unfortunately really think this was a mistake, because a good thumbnail is so important when it comes to getting people to click on your video. So in the future, I will absolutely make sure I get that sorted before I launch more major animation projects. I'm just glad I finally got around to making a thumbnail I'm much happier with. So yeah, after I was officially finished with the grind, Rainbow Willows went live. It's crazy just how much goes into a 2-minute clip. It was seriously a lot of work, and there's a lot I would do differently in the future, but I really am proud of what I was able to accomplish. There are a lot more animated projects I plan on working on and releasing this year. I definitely just needed a bit of a break first, but I'll be picking up work on my own stuff full-time again at some point this June ideally. I sincerely hope you guys are looking forward to what's to come, because I am so unbelievably excited for the future of this channel. And as a reminder, I am an indie creator working really hard to pursue my own original series. If you want to support me in what I do, I would love it if you consider donating to my Patreon or picking up something from my merch store. Link below. Likes, comments, follows, and shares are also super appreciated and great for the algorithm. That's all for now. I've got some other speed paints and a channel update video I'm working on, which should be coming soon. Stay tuned for those. Don't forget to check out everyone who helped me bring my little project to life. They're all linked in the description. Thank you guys for your support, and see you all soon.